Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us. So we're going to start the session in exactly 30 seconds. Okay, so good morning and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our second FinTech Friday session of 2022. My name is Karil, and with us today, we have an amazing panel of experts for the first of our three-part series on designing gender-intelligent FinTechs. So before we start, just a quick reminder, keep your microphones on mute, and please rename yourselves to include your name and institution name so that we can identify you. The business case for serving women with better financial services is clear. With women expected to control over $216 trillion globally. Alliance research into fintechs and the female economy in 2021 showed that fintechs are leaving money on the table by not becoming gender intelligent. The gender gap in fintech usage is 27.6%. That means for every 100 men who use fintechs, only 72 or 73 women use fintech products. That's 3 times greater than the gap in access to formal accounts and represents a massive unserved and underserved market, which fintechs are uniquely positioned to support. The main reasons for this high gender gap are, first, many fintechs target young urban male demographic, considering them the early adopters. And as a result, their solutions and their services speak to and reach more men than women. Second, there is limited or lack of research-based understanding of various segments' behaviors and needs, in particular, women. And women and men process information and think and make decisions differently, and we all know that. And if these nuances are not taken into consideration and are ignored when designing the user experience and the services, then it causes more women users to drop off across the different stages of the funnel. And then lastly, from the investor's side, the gender lens is either missing, or when it is there, it simply focuses on women's representation from a leadership perspective and a D&I perspective rather than serving the women's market. So our analysis found that if the conversion rates were equal for men and women across the sales funnel, it could increase revenues for fintechs by up to 70%. The sales funnel is at the heart of the business model for fintechs. In this session, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first 2 stages, which is awareness and consideration, and the terms may vary from one fintech to the other. And we're going to address the many barriers that women face, and then we're going to hear from our amazing fintechs on the different gender differentiated efforts they have taken, from tailoring their marketing campaigns that appeal to women to relationship building through the community. So I'd like to welcome my amazing panel of experts, Preeti, founder and CEO of Lakshmi, Rosalia Ritao, I hope I said your family name right, CEO of Dixie, and then Rachel Freeman, Chief Growth Officer. So if I can please ask you to introduce yourself in the same order I presented you, and your companies and what you do very briefly, so that then we can kick off the session.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, everyone. It's good evening in Mumbai. I'm Preeti. I'm the founder of Lakshmi. It's a financial platform for women. We started as an investment platform, but slowly realized that just investing is not the way forward for women, because we obviously face challenges across the journey from earning to investing to borrowing. So we're building blocks of slowly getting the earn piece, the save piece in place for the app. It's a pleasure to be here. Financial Alliance is home for Lakshmi. So always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Rosalia? You're on mute, Rosalia. I hate to kill the motivation.
And I'm still on mute. Good evening, everybody. Good evening from Thailand. My name is Rosalia Ritao, and I am the CEO of Dixie. We are also a financial home for women, and very similar to what Preeti described, our raison d'etre is to nudge women along their investment journey. But to do this, we have to take a few steps just before that final trigger. And so we focus a lot on financial literacy. We focus a ton on building community and engendering trust. And with those two critical pieces in place, then we start moving ourselves towards investment action. And just like Priti, Financial Alliance for Women is very much home for us. We actually participated in the October 2021 hackathon back when Dixie was a mere idea. Rachel, I remember you as well. And it was fantastic to speak with you at Financial Alliance for Women as well then. And it was actually shortly thereafter, got our first injection of angel financing. And, a year and a half later, we built a team. We have a product in market in the Philippines and just launched kind of a soft launch in Nigeria. And so I'm so excited to be here. Every single time I'm in a room convened by Financial Alliance for Women, something happens that usually takes up my timetable, but very happy to be back and looking forward to this discussion.
Perfect. Thank you, Rosalia. And Rachel, on to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Carol. And Rosalia, that's really nice that you remember that. I mean, it was great to see the hackathon and all the different parts to it. And of course, the first kind of hackathon and launch and competition, we were the winners, and that really set the stage for time, actually, and lots of things happened because of that. So we're always grateful to be part of anything with the Financial Alliance for Women. So my name is Rachel Freeman, and I lead growth at Time. We're a digital bank group. Our first bank is Time Bank in South Africa. And the Financial Alliance is seen as a grow too. We're about to hit 5 million customers there. We maintain still that we have a majority of women customers. We have a number of, this is the year for us to move into SME. So that's what I'm going to be talking about more tonight. And we have a really interesting NFS platform, which called Tribe, that we're partnering with, which Mo is on this tonight. So I'll be talking about that as well. Our next bank is called GoTime in the Philippines, and we're going to be launching it quite soon. We integrate into retail stores, and that's part of our core part of our model. And we're hot on to looking at country 3. So we're hoping by the end of the year that we will have our 3rd banking license.
Amazing. Thank you. So what a wonderful panel of women and experts and, and fintechs. So hitting it right where it is. I mean, the first stage of the funnel, as we presented in our research, is awareness. And it's when a fintech is launching its solution to promote the brand, to create awareness among its target market. And if the language and the imagery and the messaging of the ads don't resonate with women, then they will either not tune in or not visit the website or the app or download, etc. And talking of that, money, savings, and investments, they're not the first thing on a woman's mind. And Preeti, if I come to you, I mean, this is exactly all you talk about. So what marketing efforts did it take for you to create that interest and the motivation for women to embark on such a journey with Lakshmi?
So I, completely agree with you. I think one, the reason women are not on financial platforms is because they're normally all black and white, a lot of jargons, and, if at all, they extend the color to maybe something which is very, men talking to men. So I think beyond that, I also agree that women are not necessarily, so we recently did this survey in India called the Lakshmi and Money Power Survey, Women and Money Power Survey. And that said that 92% women don't even reach out for any sort of financial news or financial content, right? So they're not even looking out for that. I think for us, the realization was that the way women, money is central to every human, right? But the way women look at it is, obviously there are a lot of emotions attached to it. Also, I think for women, it is essential to sort of find it very, very relatable to their everyday lives as beyond. And a lot of the communication that goes out is normally, how do you beat the index? Very competitive sort of jargonized communication. So I think we realized that first of all, we need to bring in very relatable stories, which have the right emotional connect for women to say, okay, this I understand, this I get this. Second was that we realized that women actually connect very deeply to financial goals. They connect very deeply to savings. When we do, and this is just when we do a lot of our Instagram posts, social media posts, amongst all the different topics, the one that gets the biggest eyeballs is savings. How do I save better? How do I save more? And I think that is possibly the first sort of communication around it has helped us at Lakshmi to get more women want to talk about money, want to understand money. And finally, of course, I think it's one of the biggest bottlenecks, at least friction points in India, is that it's not normal for women to have money conversations. It's very hard, whether it's your family environment, whether it's your work environment. It's the men who are talking money. Women are sort of in a very implicit way discouraged from talking money. So they don't really find a platform where they can go and talk money. So I think for us, the third biggest point was that how do we build a platform where we're normalizing money conversations, where I as a woman don't hesitate asking any money question that I may have without really being judged. So creating a safe space. So I think that's how we've looked at it, and have been fairly successful in getting women very, very interested now in talking, not just savings, but also now talking about growing their money, investing their money.
Perfect. And Rosalia, I want to jump to you now. And when designing Dixie, so because you're all about money just as much, did you carry out any research into understanding key behaviors of women with money specifically? And how did that impact your design process?
Yes, and completely, in short. Yes, so we incorporated exactly a year ago today. So 6 months prior to that, between the hackathon and when we incorporated, it was all research. So I have a research background. I did my master's in economics, specifically in behavioral economics. So Priti, when you talk about people making decisions based on emotions and psychological reasons, and generally not with their frontal cortex of rational choice, that is spot on, not just for women, but for people writ large. So whenever I see a gap, when I see a $3 trillion gap that finance is left on the table from not, addressing women, I ask myself, well, is it entirely because women are risk averse and it's us? Or is it because somebody's not capturing the way in which we make decisions, right? So of course I began with research, because my question wasn't, why are women risk averse? It was, what's happening here that's not making them do something that is clearly for their, in their best interest. And conversely, why is, as we know, an industry fairly well known for figuring out how to squeeze money out of people, why aren't they taking $3 trillion sitting on the table? So we did all the classic research things. So deep dive, literature review. A lot of it actually came from Financial Alliance for Women. You guys have a fantastic, compendium, library sources specific to that inquiry. We also did key informant interviews. So I met with a ton of not only fintech, but DeFi companies, because, looking at the new fintech, female fintech companies, and to really try and deep dive and understand what was this chasm, and what was causing this chasm. And then of course we focused on focus groups. So we did dozens and dozens of focus group discussions, particularly in our key market, and where we were planning on launching our operations in the Philippines. But we also did them in places where we knew thinking about where we wanted to expand to. And so what was really interesting, I think the thing that, when I first set out, I thought, oh, we're going to build, a financial, an investment tool for financially excluded only and lower income. And it became really apparent actually from the research that we did, that this problem is agnostic of nationality. It's agnostic of socioeconomic status. It's agnostic of education status. And I cannot tell you how many meetings I go to, pitches I go to, where after this conversation, a senior woman in investment banking will send me a private message to tell me, oh my God, I'm one of these people. It's me too. This is a problem. This is a significant global problem. And it's not only a fantastic market opportunity that, we're all able to capture now because of basically smartphones, the internet, and, technology. But I think that similarly, it's just an opportunity that we not only have to capture, but we should capture, because there is a moral imperative, because women are barreling, all these professional, educated, six-figure earning income are barreling themselves towards retirement and poverty. And we know that statistically to be true. We have an 80% more likely chance, regardless of how much money we make, to end in poverty. So, market urgency, moral imperative, this is all what stemmed from the intense research we did. And this is obviously why we're all doing what we're doing.
And all of that finding, sorry, before I jump to you, Rachel, all of that finding, how did it impact how you put you design your fintech?
We design everything user first. So it's part of our, what is it called, our sprints. So we have our development sprints with our development team. Our sprints are very much, we test our design with our end users. We have various focus groups, like as part of our, creation team. We build, we go back to focus groups upon the release, what worked, what didn't, then we go back and we rebuild. This is an iterative process, and it is absolutely inclusive of the women that we want to use the app. We don't build at all in a vacuum.
Perfect. Amazing. And yes, I couldn't agree more with everything you've said as well. Rachel, now you're different in the sense that you're actually a digital bank. So it doesn't really make things much easier. And what effective marketing campaigns and tactics have Time put in place to attract female clients?
All right, so first, I think it's really exciting listening to what Lakshmi's doing and what Dixie's doing. And, we can relate to a lot of this. And Rosalia, I think actually we should be talking to you about how we can work together in the Philippines with GoTime. So first, we have some basic things that we think about at Time, which is first that we actually people like people. So we actually have touch. We're a digital bank, but we have touch at the front end. And so we actually have ambassadors that do a lot of financial literacy. And the other thing is that we don't believe anybody wakes up in the morning and thinks, today I'm so excited, I want to go open a bank account. You have to manufacture that. And so the way that we've done this is by having our digital kiosk, and we've talked a lot about at different events about the kiosk in grocery stores across South Africa. And that meant that we leveraged the trust of those grocery stores, Pick n Pay and Boxer, which is the most trusted brand in South Africa. So while we were new, we got us cover from Pick n Pay, which is not a new brand. And so when you walk into the grocery store, we have our kiosk there, that you have the ambassador talks to you about Time, then you could open a bank account in between 3 and 5 minutes, and you get a personalized debit card. And that's also part of the marketing that happens, because once you have something tangible, it makes it realer. And that aspect, that's kind of one of the main things that we do. And a lot of people ask us, isn't that expensive to have the kiosk? But the kiosk is actually really cheap compared to digital marketing. So we do have the ability to, you can download the app and start using it on your own device. That is significantly more expensive for us for customer acquisition because of the significantly increasing costs of digital marketing. So we do marketing campaigns, we do radio campaigns. We had a big campaign that talked about, different women who work at Time as one aspect. But the main focus that what we do is actually through the kiosk in the stores. And we now have launched we have a new partner called the Fashini Group, TFG, which is retail fashion. And so now we have the kiosks and the ambassadors in the retail, in those fashion stores, and that's linked with a loyalty program from TFG. So this is a second way that we're actually using that in South Africa. And our kiosk, the first batch of kiosks, is in a container en route to the Philippines right now, where we're going to be start testing them. Our partner is the Go Conway Group. They have Robinson's Retail and a lot of different retail stores in the Philippines. They're the largest retailer. And so we're going to be implementing that as our first step in terms of kind of building out awareness in the Philippines.
Amazing. And I love that, the fact that you've integrated touch with the, within the whole thing. I mean, that is a whole different marketing approach. And especially when you're a bank, I think it does help with the conversion, right? I'm sure the conversion is much, much faster when you have a person there and there's a touch point and there's something tangible than having to, make double, triple that in a digital campaign, in your case, and have lower conversion rates. And from touch, I want to say, because touch does create trust. And Preeti, I want to come to you, because trust is one of the main factors that's hindering women's uptake of fintech services. Can you share what's Lakshmi's approach to leveraging community to instill trust and build that rapport with women clients?
Absolutely, Carol. So I think, again, when I said women behave differently with money, I think the way they build trust is also very, very different. I've done financial services for 2 decades before this, which was gender agnostic. And I would see men build trust with transaction, which is, if you offered them a great opportunity, they would say, okay, let me try it out, with a small amount of money also, let me try it out. Whereas women, transaction comes only when that trust has been fully built, right? So it's at the far deep end. And that's what we realized. And we said, how do we shorten that curve? And that's where community came into the play. And we said, okay, community is one place, because as women, I can give you several instances when my children were young, I would go to the doctor and say, my daughter's not well, can you, give her medication? And the doctor would prescribe some medication. I would come home and I would still speak to family or friends and say, hey, this is happening to my daughter, and the doctors advise this. So do you think, what did you do if something like that happened? So I think for us, that peer-to-peer conversation is actually the shortest way of building trust. We suffer from so much self-doubt, especially when it comes to money decisions. And a lot beyond, but particularly money decisions. And I think when we find validation with our peer set, it helps us build trust in ourselves first, saying that, oh, if they can do it, if my friends are saying or my peers are saying this is how they did it, okay, I can do it as well. So I think that is where community actually plays a very, very important role. First of all, building trust in yourself, in saying, I can do this. I think that's the most important sort of, milestone to cross. And once that happens, and if you've been a part of community which has helped you, which has enabled you to build that trust, obviously your first port of call is that community, or for us, for example, the app Lakshmi, which owns that community or moderates that community, or, like we say, gives it the tender loving care. So then okay, this is a known environment. So I think it really shortens. We've seen that the journey of a woman to really starting to talk about money to actually doing transaction typically could be anywhere between 9 months to a year and a half. We've seen the community coming onto the community reduce it to about 2 months, where entering the community to really doing the transaction is a very, very short journey. So I think that tells us that community is so essential in building and trust on 2 fronts: trust in yourself to saying I can take financial decisions, and second, trust on the platform, because you're part of a community on the platform. So yes, I think that's how we've enabled women to build trust.
Perfect. And Rosalia, studies that confirm that women are more concerned about cybersecurity and digital privacy, and they're the ones that actually check the fine print all the time. So how has Dixie created this sense of trust to enroll and engage women clients?
So this is really interesting. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. During the 6 months of deep dive research, of course, I was doing my key informant interviews. And one of the informant interviews that I had, I spoke with senior level people at one of Philippines' largest wallets. And this wallet, so my background, I had worked at Ant Financial and Alipay. So I knew all about the super app rollout, and this wallet was doing the super app rollout. So I was like, okay, let's talk. I want to understand this. And I asked this all male team, how's the investment app performing, with women? And they're all like, oh, it's funny that you should ask. Actually, we never even noticed, but actually, we don't really have any female users on this. I thought that's really interesting. What they didn't realize was prior to that, I had already been running, I had my focus group discussions, and I'd asked about this wallet. And I'd said, how are you guys using it? How's everybody using it? And first discussion was, well, we use it just to transfer the exact amount of money that we need to buy the thing. So if I want to go buy banana bread for my friend on Instagram, I just transfer 171 pesos. And then that's all I do, right? And it turns out it was all based on, there was this rumor about security and, and what was interesting is it was across different focus groups. And obviously my first inclination was, had they bother asking anybody, they would have known that there was this thing, which means, you would create the campaign around being able to trust. But obviously this was cutting under their bottom line, because the entire premise for that investment sub app actually requires that money is lingering on the app. So it's, it was undercutting their bottom line by just not asking these questions and not addressing them. So this was obviously top of my thinking when we were rolling out the app, because I didn't want to make obviously the same mistake. And a few things started to become apparent, both in my the research that we did before we launched, and then in some of the data that we're collecting after our MVP. And one thing I think to engender trust, value alignment is really important. And one thing that we opined from the usage just on our app, there's kind of like the 3 Fs became really apparent. And this corresponds to like the bigger picture research. Women's values when it comes to money, finances, investments, family, faith, and female empowerment. So that's something that whatever your belief system is, it's there. You kind of have to take that into account in your marketing, your messaging, in everything that you do, because you have to align yourself to the values of your end users, right? The second thing, which is very much, and sorry, Rachel, I might have to copy what you did. The touch thing. We do this, we still do it virtually because, we launched during a pandemic. But I borrowed this from my days in crypto, which is meetups. We have them every Thursday. We invite, generally a female expert to have a fireside discussion every Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Manila plug. But what sets us apart at these, and what really contributed to the growth, was we always require our experts. It's not just talking heads. At the end of the session, they have to teach something. So it's like, okay, if we invite a crypto person from X, exchange, we're like, now we're all going to open a wallet, and we bring in somebody from our own team to be like the guinea pig. It's like, well, I don't know how to do this, and that kind of touch really helps engender trust. And then that third thing that speaks to trust and feeling secure is the accompaniment. This is a really big thing that we notice not only in our community that we're building, but also on the data from the app, doing things with people. So like being the guinea pig the first day I open an NFT wallet, I have no idea what I'm doing. Being that person to join in the journey with them engenders trust, because they don't feel like they're alone. But B, they realize like, oh, wait, it's kind of like that moment when you realize like nobody knows what they're doing. It's both exhilarating and terrifying. So I think that there's focusing on those 3 things, kind of value, having a sense of community, and accompanying people through things that are confusing. I think those go to making us feel like we're tangible, even though, this is all virtual, it's all happening in the metaverse. But we're real, we're tangible, and we are present, and we're regularly present. They know every week they're going to see us.
Yeah, that's great, really great. Finding all the different ways to create that trust, to maintain that trust, and to create that engagement. It's not easy, but once you find the right momentum and the right way, I think it's very productive and very fulfilling. Rachel, I want to come to you, and I want to ask from a digital bank perspective, if you've seen any gender differences in the barriers to and the behaviors towards uptake of all the financial services that you have, and how has it impacted your bottom line?
Well, I mean, we definitely have different, I'd say, usage of our account by men and women. And, you know, in terms of ATM, like we don't have ATMs, we have cash in, cash out at the grocery store, and women use that, and men, you go to ATMs and pay a big fee to use that. But I want to talk more about kind of our SME platform and what we're doing with SMEs. So we launched a business account. You have to have a customer account, like a retail consumer account, to open a business account, which is something we're trying to move away from. And so far, the majority of those accounts are men. There's not that much functionality. However, we're going to be rolling out a lot of functionality on those accounts in the next 2 months. But one thing that we know is that, and if women-led businesses, and in South Africa, we are only focused on sole proprietors. So side hustle, social sellers, tradespeople, they're all our segment, and they require a lot of support. Like a lot of those businesses feel that they are not recognized as real businesses, and they feel that they always have to show who they are, and you know that they require to be verified by someone. And so we have partnered with a platform called Tribe Fintech, and Tribe is providing these sole proprietors a mixture of, I would say, community, where they can interact with community and in community groups, plus targeted education and content focused mainly on social sellers right now, and you know, allowing them to follow pathways in terms of how and get recommendations for their business, and then a whole host of business tools like accounting tools, or how to launch you know, Instagram account and start selling, how to do the social selling, all of those important tools. And that's all together in one platform. So it's white labeled to time, and it's going to be launched, but it's powered by Tribe. And what we're doing with this is that we know from a lot of work that's been done by the Financial Alliance for Women and by IFC, that non-financial services is the way to build trust for women-led businesses. And this is actually more important for them than for male businesses. So we think that by bringing forward this really very powerful and all-encompassing non-financial service platform that enables that women-led business, or you know, really side hustle, to figure out everything at one place, and then have communities where they can chat and say, well, how do you do this, how do you do that? We think that that is really important. So we have a Facebook group that's curated by Time Bank, which has, I think, actually I don't always listen to the statistic, but I don't never memorize it, but it has maybe 3,500 people on it, not that many. But then there's a different group that's led by people, not part of Time. They're always giving tips on how to use Time, which has like 100,000 people on it. So the reality is that we're kind of missing out by not being part of that other community. And so by working through Tribe, we're going to be able to actually, one, get the insights from that, and actually be able to drive a lot more customer and community conversations. So it's taking a lot of what Preeti and Rosalia said, but we see this way and how we're going to work is going to really drive forward our SME platform, our SME accounts, and our functionality that we're expanding significantly now. And with this, but without the non-financial service platform, we're just not going to be able to get the trust that we think we should be able to get. So that's why our big focus right now is actually enabling this partner of ours to kind of gain force and be able to launch there. And we have, or I'd say Tribe has just done 3 days of focus groups with both men and women businesses, and really heard a lot of all the things we know, which is that they're looking for ways to actually show that they're real business people. You know, one of them was using our soft pause for the first time, and she said it was the first time that she really felt like she was a women business, like a business owner, by using the soft pause that we've established. Or another was talking about, you know, if you have all these tools, it just makes the business going, and then they can move faster, and they just want it to happen immediately. So there's a big need for this type of community out there, and we see this as the way for us to actually build that whole segmentation, similar to how we did with the kiosks in the grocery stores.
That's perfect. And it's so nice to see that you're really looking for the different ways to really create that trust and really maximize on the information that's out there. And I think this is a key component of the second stage of the funnel, which is the consideration, right? Which is where you're showcasing your products and your services, but you've done that first impression, and now you're trying to encourage people to sign up and to sign in. And this is a lot of the time where leakage happens with women. And largely because the registration process, or the next step, is quite cumbersome. And so I want to come to you, Lakshmi. What key mechanisms do you have in place to ensure a seamless registration and onboarding process for women?
So I think, Carol, in India, the government itself has created this wonderful product known as the India Stack. Which actually makes onboarding very, very efficient and very easy. I remember as part of the hackathon, we actually spoke to a bank in Bangladesh, and I think just really seeing that they still had to do know your customer in person just made me realize that I think we're really lucky in that sense. So I think onboarding for us is fairly seamless. I think where the friction actually comes from sharing data, right? So for example, you need to open an account, you need, as part of the know your customer process, you need to upload your unique, identity card, which is known as the Aadhaar in India. And I think women, because they are always worried that should I share this or not share this? So they have like these questions, should I be sharing this? What we've done is, before they come to the account opening page, I think before that, we've sort of laid out that these are the steps. This is why this is needed, how this data is going to be treated, who has access to this data, and the fact that this is part of know your customer, which actually gives them far more security and safety, that they are being, all of this is being collected as part of regulation and compliance, and sort of, very explicitly saying, hey, you are part of a regulated entity, and which is why these documents, and it'll take you, 2 minutes to upload and open an account, and the data will not be visible to anybody else. It's, encrypted and stored in a certain place and shared only with the government agency, right? So I think that is what typically, has helped us to break through that friction. I think technology plays such an important part. I mean, I think this is quite implicit today. UI, UX, all of that, along with the technology, plays a very important part as well. I think if it doesn't function right, if it doesn't feel very intuitive, then that's where the friction comes in. So I think between all of this, obviously, you have to make it really, really seamless. It's great to give information upfront and say this will be needed and why this is needed. I think that makes it quite seamless. Also, we put in all our licenses and everything upfront to say, regulated entity, licensed entity, all of that. Testimonials are, again, a great way to sort of break that barrier, where we get in testimonials of women saying, I opened the account in 2 minutes and I've been, investing for the last year, etc. So I think all of these put together sort of help take away that friction.
Perfect. And I love it. I love the fact that you actually kind of showed the full map of what to expect. That's one of the biggest challenges I have in a lot of the different, fintechs or products that I use online. And I would love for someone to tell me what would be the step after. Sometimes I keep things blank and I keep doing the next, trying to see what will come and then go back and start again. Some don't allow, some do. So I think that's great. Rosalia, so studies have shown that fintechs have actually only less than 20 seconds to convince users to stay on their site. and that nearly 40% of the users actually drop off because the registration is too cumbersome or just too time consuming. So what are some of your most successful approaches to make sure that you're converting visitors to sign up?
Yes. Yep, learn that. So obviously, you know, following the whole data stream, when we saw, oh, look at all these downloads. Oh wait, there's so many registrations. Oh wait. So, you know, yes, there is a gap. And so we obviously did a couple of things. We shortened our registration process. We had a lot of profound discussions, you know, dev versus marketing about, do we keep the OTP higher level of security, or do we make things easier and like integrate with socials, which particularly in the Philippines market would just make it so much easier. We erred on the side of security because, you know, in the long term, that is going to speak a lot more to, you know, acquiring clients over time. But we have these thinking and discussions. So then we landed on, okay, we know that we convert better when we have that sense of touch. We know because we have weekly events and we have, you know, in tandem with our MVP launch. So we see when there's peaks and we see when there's troughs of downloads and registration. So we know that works. And we're like, okay, well, this is something that works is constant touch. And, you know, these events literally cost us nothing. And they're fantastic ways of engendering a sense of community. So there's that. We also convert by gamifying things. So we gamify either, you know, via our digital marketing or gamify at our weekly meetups, because what that does is just help push a little bit that envelope so that people are incentivized to download. And the next thing that we will be introducing is our kind of, you know, crypto NFT incentives in the summer to basically encourage women to learn more. And it's part of our Learn to Earn platform. And yes, maybe at the beginning, the value of these tokens won't be worth much, but A, they're a learning tool. B, you know, they'll be used as points and rewards. But what's really interesting, and this is what we found, women are extremely interested in decentralized finance. And this is across countries, right? What's really interesting is the prevailing thought is women don't invest because they're risk averse. And yet everywhere we're seeing they're just leapfrogging to the riskiest asset class. And so, and knowingly, by the way. So I think knowing that about them and knowing that they're placing a higher value, not necessarily subject to any monetary value, to what this future of finance looks like, that's also a way in which we will be incentivizing on our Learn to Earn platform. But absolutely, I think it's a constant challenge. I would also love to hear how other people are tackling it.
Amazing. Thank you, Rachel. So registration is usually a daunting process, and I think it's a lot more when it is for a digital bank and you're opening an account. So forms sometimes are long, too much documentation is needed. The language is a lot of the times technical. So how has Time addressed all of these challenges? I mean, they're opening a bank account in a kiosk, you know, just by being not in a bank or a branch. So how has that been addressed?
Yeah, so our kiosks, I mean, they look like somewhat like ATMs, and they, you know, people, how does this work? But their kiosks are actually, there's a lot of AI, a lot of machine learning, and they're very smart. We started this in South Africa. You don't need to put any paper. We don't believe in paper. You don't have to scan anything. You just put in your South African ID, and that immediately talks to Home Affairs in South Africa and we have a number of kind of a series of questions that are asked that we agreed with the regulator for that. So we feel very comfortable with the ability to open the accounts quickly, and that's worked very well. I mean, of course, we know the Aadhaar system, and it's really easy to use that. It would be great if all countries did that. So slightly more complicated in the Philippines. But we have figured out how to do this with the kiosks. So, you know, we had gone through that process actually with the regulator before we applied for the digital bank license. So we knew that we'd be able to use the kiosk. And the kiosk, we've actually trained the kiosk in, you know, it's easy in Mandarin to do this because they're just symbols. So it's really easy. But we trained our kiosk to work in Egypt with like script in Arabic, which took the kiosk 4 months to be able to really check an ID. but we were able to do that. So we know that our kiosk can go anywhere now, and it learns quite quickly. That's, that's really core to us, that you need to be able to open an account. But, when you talk about this, what we think about is that most times when you open a bank account, you go into a branch and either you fill out forms or you sit next to someone who fills out forms. It takes about 45 minutes. They hand you everything. You walk out and you learn nothing about how to use the account. And that was the whole reason that we introduced the ambassadors, because the ambassadors don't help you open the account. It's self-service. It's very easy to use the kiosk, but then they help you download the app, teach you how to actually use the app, how to send money, all the functionality, help you activate it at the cash register. So all the things that we think should be happening when you open an account, we have implemented. And that was one of the core kind of things about time, is that we don't assume where you are in your financial journey or your digital journey. We think it's important to meet you where you are, and then we walk with you together. So we meet people. We always say you have to walk from where you stand. And so we meet you where you stand and walk on that journey with you.
Amazing. Isn't that something? And can you imagine the beauty of really not having the need to have a 45-minute meeting with a personal banker to open a bank account, and all the documents and all the signatures you do, and look at that, it's just a kiosk, like a machine, and you can do it. I hope the whole digital banking can take over the world and simplify things for all humans eventually. So I'm going to open the Q&A. I see some questions already. The first one is from Barbara Magnoni. So I think it was about what you were saying, Rosalia. I wonder about the business case to build all the trust and the momentum. Do you need a huge capital? And if so, how do you avoid investors pushing multi-level models that are extractive? If it's possible.
Yes, and it's hard. Well, okay. So there's a couple, I think the first part is, do you need a ton of money to gain vendor trust? And I think the answer is not necessarily. I think the key is to create a team that is aligned in exactly what you're trying to do. I think intention and mission actually really does matter. And I think when you're, and now with, social media and digital, like a lot of these things are subsidized. About having that core value, having the right team in place who have those, who also share that core value, but who also have those tentacles out. And it's, it goes beyond just having an influencer. It's about having a team of people who others trust as well. I think you can get quite far just with that. And we did, I mean, in our first, that's kind of our first 6 months, right? And I think you can gain quite a lot of traction that way. I think that you're right. I think that, as we're now, moving into kind of our fundraise and looking at more institutional funders, this does become, there is a push towards a different level of, not even a push. It's I think an impatience towards, we have to start generating revenue today, and it goes beyond conversion. It's like convert them and then give them a loan and then get them in debt. And this isn't really what our business is about. And we know actually, because the data suggests like women, once they pick a financial home, any home, whether it's, they don't move. So this is a long-term, your LTV, you can kind of push back on the investors and say, look, my lifetime value of this client is going to be much higher if I kind of engender and maintain this trust over time. So there are some levers that you can use to push back, but absolutely there's, institutional funders also have their own KPIs. And so I think it's about, particularly when you're doing a fundraise, and I've done this now, this is my second time around. It's about finding people who really believe in what you're doing and who align to your values. And that is not easy, but they're out there. It's about networking and finding people who share those values and who understand what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you. There's a question from Maria Duarte, and I know, Rachel, you answered in the chat, but just for those who didn't catch it. So how do you get women engaged with non-financial services platform? If you can just maybe very quickly touch upon that.
All right. Well, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about this fundraising aspect, because I think that if we take a step back and we have two great entrepreneurs here, who are female founders. And, there are not many women founders in Asia, and there are not many women angels. And if you want to start your business, you need to have women angels. But so you kind of, if you're on these different WhatsApp chats, you think that there are women angels out there. But after you start digging, you realize there are not really that many women angels. And, and then they're very, it's just, and the women founders, I don't know if Preeti and Razal, you've had this experience, but there is a massive difference if you're raising money as a man and starting a fintech. It's like, oh, and you have this whole big old boy network. And kind of over the last couple of months, just through different things that we're doing at time, it's really hit home for me how strong the old boy network is for fundraising for women for their fintechs, and that does not exist for women. And we've talked a little bit of different things with the Financial Alliance for Women and different groups, but I really think that when we think about fundraising, so even if it's not that much money that you need, it's going to be much harder to do it if you're focused kind of on women or if you're a women founder. So this is something that's really important. And probably it does get easier after you make it over that first hump, because you have impact investors, and there are certain programs out there that are now requiring to support women. But the first couple million that you have to raise, which comes from your network, and there's just a big difference, is quite challenging. In terms of our kind of NFS platform, I'm not really worried about getting the word out about it, because at this point, we have, so as compared to when we started and when we first engaged with Carol and with Inez about time, 1 in 10 South Africans has a Time Bank account. So just where the word is out there, and we are, launching more interesting products that are going for these SMEs. So I think the NFS, but also it's just amazing when we do the focus groups for this platform, how strong, like people are like, can I have it tomorrow? There's so much need out there for curated information. Like a woman is starting a business and she wants to sell on Instagram, and there's like 25 different ways to do it. But it's just saying you don't need to have 25 different ways to do it. You just have one that someone says this, in a community where you can say, how actually do I do it, and make it really easy. And if you have something like that, it's not easy to sell it. But so that's kind of not something that we're as concerned about, kind of in the broad sense of how we're doing things. And we will use the kind of all the different tools that we've learned over. We're celebrating our 3rd birthday in February, so we kind of learned, we've learned so many lessons along the way. You make so many different mistakes, so that and we have a lot of trust, because we didn't, as Razal, you were saying, we didn't launch with lending. We actually launched with transactional banking and just making it easier for people for the basics. And now as we get to know customers, we're going to start moving into lending, but we're taking it very slowly. And I think that also has really helped kind of on the trust side, and that we're not moving as fast. Of course, I can tell you that investors and people want to see you break even by a certain point. And in the financial service business, you break even in some ways if you're a bank by lending. So you have to do this, but you have to do it in the right way. And that's what we've done.
Amazing. And, just to follow up on what you were saying, Rachel, about the not having enough investors and angels and not enough support to women founders. And one of the reasons why that pushed us now to consider creating something called the Fintech Investor Forum, which we're going to launch one in June and another hopefully in November during the summit, is to create that linkage between all the fintechs that are female founded or female focused with investors. I think there is a lack of opportunity, and we want to try and create that opportunity as much as possible. So doing things from where we are, being connected with all the different parties. So this is one of the reasons why we're launching that. And many of you will be in contact. We will be in contact with all of you to inform you about the details. Preeti, so there's a question from Malavika. You mentioned that women don't necessarily like talking about money, specifically their own money. So how do you strike a balance when building a community? Where do you want to nudge women toward being financially empowered through community trust engagement without explicitly talking about money?
Okay, so I'm going to correct that a little bit. I think women don't like talking about money when they feel they are being judged. Once we started a community which was only for women, we realized women are dying to ask questions about money. They've just not got that platform, right? So I think because they don't get an opportunity, once you create a safe space, we realize, and it's overwhelming actually, the questions and the conversations on the community. I've come from financial services, but there are so many blind spots even for me. Because I've been part of a community which talks money, right? But when I come here to the Lakshmi community, it's unbelievable where women will ask simple questions like, I want to take my parents on a holiday. How can I have this conversation with my family? Because in India, it's not normal for a woman to take care, after she's married, to take care of her own parents and family, right? So even simple things like that, there are questions around that. And obviously she's not got a platform, any platform where she's been able to talk about this. So I think women do feel the need to have it. I think they just don't have the right platform to speak about it, or they don't feel confident enough asking those questions, because either they will be, either the question will be called very silly, or they will be, hushed into saying, is that, why do you even need to know? I'm here, like, the male members of the family, we are there to take care of it, etc. So I think when we got women on the community, we realized, oh my God, there is this, very, very sort of it's within them, it's been literally cooped up, and they really want to get it out and ask those questions. So Malavika, just a little correction there. I think we as women, at least the women of the community, are loving having the money conversations, and I think it's more important to create that space. And one of the biggest learnings is that we as families, I think we need to encourage, we need to make money, sometimes even a dinner table conversations, because it's important for children, especially girls who are growing up, to know that it's okay to have these questions. It's okay to understand what we're doing with our money. I know when I was young, my parents shied away from having that conversation with us children, because it was like, don't talk money with the children around, right? I think that's completely changed. I think we should make this, at least as women who understand, we need to make this. And in our community, it's one of the things that we encourage, that go back home and, talk about money. What are you doing? What is the family's, proposition of managing their financial goals? What are they doing with their money? I think it's very, very important.
Very correct. And Rachel, I see you already replied to Rati's question, so thank you on that. Well, I can't believe it's almost time to end the session, but I actually want to get one. I want to squeeze one question in. What is the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were designing your fintech? Rosalia, since you left, you start first.
I don't know. Going through the list. I'm actually one of I think the keys to starting a company is actually quite a lot of ignorance. So I'm actually glad I didn't know all of this. Otherwise, analysis paralysis, and you just never start. But if there is one thing that I wish that could have been nice to know is make sure you understand how Google Ads works, because it's a really, really, really important part of a digital marketing strategy. So that's one. To Rachel's point, make sure fundraising is not, it's very network based. So make sure that you dedicate time for building network. I definitely see this, and I've seen this in my previous life as a professional. Women are so busy doing the work, we don't dedicate enough time to networking, and it's critical when you're building capital, and even more critical that you're intentional about it during a pandemic where you can't necessarily be everywhere at once. I think those are the two, that would be the thing I would I wish I was maybe more aware of, but also maybe it would have stopped me because I would have said, oh my God, I have a CEO's job is to look for money all the time. So actually it's for the best I didn't know, but now I know.
Sorry, Preeti.
I'm really trying very hard not to sound, very pompous, but I just sort of think back and I'm like, would I have done anything differently? I can't. I think the only one thing I can think of is, because I came from very conventional business to a startup founder. And I think one of the things that it took me time to sort of come to terms with was it is okay to build and fail instead of really trying perfection, right? So just build at speed, fine to fail and then quickly pivot. I think that took me about 6 months to come to terms with, but I'm there now. I think that's the only piece that I wish I, had done right from the beginning. But other than that, I think, I can't think, I think we've done fairly all right on Lakshmi. And I wish, the only thing is I wish I'd participated in the Financial Alliance Hackathon even earlier, right? I think winning that was the biggest high. So great work again.
Well, since you mentioned it, then, it's a good segue for me to kind of mention that we have a bigger and better hack coming in 2022. So stay tuned and we'd love to mention all. And I love the fact that all three of you have had that hack journey with us. Rachel, coming on to you, what is the one thing you wish you knew before, very quickly, because we're already a minute over time?
All right. Well, as compared to that, we've had millions of mistakes and we constantly learn from our mistakes. I mean, with if with Bank 3, we will be launching lending much faster. Like each bank, we're going to do this faster because in the end, the push to be profitable is very strong. And so that's the way for a digital bank to do this. So, starting lending 3.5 years after you launch a bank is, slower. And so that has affected the profitability. But I mean, there's a huge amount of, I'd say, tech debt that you make a decision that's a fast decision for right now. And then you have a lot of technology debt that you accomplish and then you have to solve. And then structuring. I mean, our structure and governance is a mess. We keep trying to improve this, but we did not do that well from the beginning. So there's like we are constantly, what we say to people is when we talk about partnering with them is, look, we're not going to repeat the mistakes we made. So we can get you all this way because you won't make those mistakes. We'll make
new ones. Exactly.
Right. But we'll do those together. At least we won't make the same mistakes. So yeah, that is what, because at every turn you kind of, in building a bank in the markets which we, South Africa is challenging, Philippines is challenging. The third one is going to be even more challenging. So you're always
challenge is
going
good.
to be, the challenge is good. So you have to be ready to recognize and move forward with all the, hundreds of mistakes that we made along the way.
It's okay. It's the only way to learn, right? I mean, making mistakes. So,
Exactly.
I mean,
That's
all three of you have agreed on that. So thank you all. You guys have been, you ladies have been amazing. It's been a very insightful session. Thank you for sharing all these, little daunting details and so candidly. I want to say two things. One, Tessa has shared in the chat the research to our fintech research that we did last year. So all those who don't have it, I highly recommend that you download and take a look. It has a lot of examples from fintechs and a lot of learning for all of you and use cases. So it's great. It really tackles the sales funnel and all the challenges of becoming to become gender intelligent. And then second, our summit is happening in November 2nd and 3rd. So mark your calendars. Would love to see you either there or online. It's going to be hybrid. And our investor forum will be happening in June. I'll be in touch with all of the fintechs. And then our next FinTech Friday will also probably be in June. So stay tuned. A lot of emails coming your way with a lot of updates. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.